I think we have just about everybody. There's a couple of folks that are still filing in, but I'd like to get started. Welcome and good morning. I'm Doug Davenport, the Executive Director of Prospect Silicon Valley. We're very, very happy that you can join us and talk with us about our open call, which is an element of a larger project known as BRICR that our partner, Barry Hooper from SF Environment, will be presenting. And Barry, I'm very glad that you could be part of this, and we're really, really happy to be working with you on this effort. So thank you so much. I'm going to share screen, and we will get started. We've got a presentation to just talk about this whole process. So just want to verify, because I do, that my screen's visible for everybody. Good, okay. So again, thank you. So before we get into BRICR, let me kind of put some context. So just a bit of perspective, when we talk about energy efficient buildings, we're often kind of de facto thinking of really big complex buildings like these. In a setting like this, you can drive a lot of efficiency at big scale, but it's a whole other ball game when the buildings you're talking about look like this. So small buildings happen to be, as many of you probably know, happen to be, well into the 90–95% of the buildings that physically are in place in the United States. And I think it constitutes, Barry, a little bit over half the square footage. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. So there's unique challenges in taking the energy efficiency approaches and tools for really large buildings where the money is there and the scale is there, and making it work for a mom and pop shop or a restaurant or a kitchen or a small warehouse or others. So that's kind of the inspiration for the work that we're doing with Barry and what Barry's been leading with the US DOE on BRICR. So this morning, things that we will be talking about. First, I'm going to give you a little introduction to Prospect Silicon Valley. Then we're going to talk about BRICR, and Barry is going to present a picture for you of the larger effort of BRICR and how this open call fits in. We'll have a discussion about the open call. This is a call, an RFI that we'll be publishing tomorrow. And we'll talk a little bit about what to expect. Many of you may be organizations that may respond directly to this call. Many of you may be incubators, accelerator programs, innovation programs, where startups that you're working with or in your portfolio or are graduates of your portfolio may be interested, and you may be passing this on. So this is an educational session across the board for that, and we're going to have a Q&A discussion at the end of this presentation in this hour. So with that, let me get started. So Prospect Silicon Valley is, as I like to say, it's an innovation and social impact hub. We are definitely a network of organizations in an ecosystem that are around common goals that compose of startups, corporate leadership, universities and academia, the public sector, as well as even industry organizations and others. And we do this because we recognize that it takes a lot of cross-collaboration for important things to happen. And these folks all kind of fundamentally need what each other brings in order to collectively move forward. So we consider ourselves an ecosystem-driven organization in that way. We do three big things. We focus on innovator programs, advising and supporting startups and working with product teams, even from the corporate sector. We relate and capture market insight and assist our folks really on both sides in kind of what we're seeing in terms of trends and opportunities. And then we do market launch. So we've done a number of large-scale partner-driven pilot programs, including the recent successful completion of a near net zero upgrade of a large grocery store with Amazon Whole Foods in San Francisco. So we've done some really interesting things along the lines, and these are the three elements that we really try to bring to the ecosystem. Our mission space happens to be in the areas of advanced and accessible mobility across the board, and in advanced buildings, which we'll be talking about today. And so far in the 6-year history of Prospect Silicon Valley, we've worked with intimately more than 40 startups, helping them pursue a path to market. We've leveraged more than $30 million in grant-funded programs, including the pilot that I just described, worked with over 50 communities, mostly in the Bay Area, representing a significant portion of the population here. And we've helped several of those communities actually capture financing totaling more than $80 million. We're excited about the past, and we're excited about the base that we stand on, and we're excited about what we can do moving forward. So with all of that, that's Prospect Silicon Valley, and we got involved with Barry and the city of San Francisco and the BRICR effort to play a role in reaching out to the innovation community to think about what's next. I'm going to let the expert tell you all about what BRICR is in the larger context and how this innovation call fits into the bigger effort. With that, I'd like to introduce Barry Hooper from the City of San Francisco Department of the Environment, and a well-recognized leader in building technology and building energy efficiency. Barry, so glad to have you.
Thanks very much, Doug. That's very kind of you. So I'm Barry Hooper with the San Francisco Department of the Environment, and I have been the private sector lead for a team that's a local government lead for a team that's a collaboration between the federal national laboratories, as well as a number of public and private entities in California. Can we advance to the next slide, please?
I think
actually, let's go to.
There we go.
Oh, can I do it?
No,
great. Okay.
It just was being stupid.
Sorry. And so you have three of the, what's on screen represents a portion of the project team. We'll talk about why the team is relatively large. And we have three of the organizations on the call today. Myself, representing the San Francisco Department of Environment. Tianzhen Hong, a senior scientist with the Berkeley Lab, who's been critical to the technical and software development. And then Doug and his team with Prospect Silicon Valley. Helping us complement the work to date. The work to date that I'm going to talk about has really been about building the technology basis for customer acquisition for energy efficiency projects. And so the actual retrofit measures focused on to date have emphasized on-the-shelf technology that's very practically available and definitively cost-effective and clearly supported by existing ratepayer programs. And we're seeking through this call to complement that by identifying technologies that are new or in offer promise that would complement those on-the-shelf technologies. So the overall project on the local government side is led by the Association of Bay Area Governments, and that's because this project does not just serve San Francisco, it actually serves the 9-county Bay Area region. And ABAG, their energy efficiency programs operate within an umbrella called BayREN, for the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, which is where just a collaboration of energy efficiency programs. And what we've done with BRICR, I'm going to go into more detail, but really this is the key slide for you to think about, is that we've taken existing on-the-ground energy efficiency program delivery experts, as well as a number of complementary disciplines. And to aid those on-the-ground energy efficiency efforts, we assembled public records to figure out the basics of building components and details for small and medium commercial buildings centered on San Francisco, but expanding to the rest of the Bay Area. And small and medium commercial buildings is defined in this context as buildings of 50,000 square feet or smaller for non-residential use. We've primarily focused on office and retail, as well as a hotel. And so by taking just the detail available in public records, We convert that into a standardized storage format called Building Sync that I'll talk about very briefly after, and develop some technology to convert those basic information into a detailed energy model for modeling in OpenStudio, and to store that information to allow the fundamental ideas that we would start with significant but imperfect data about the local built environment and set up a system where we could improve our understanding of buildings and use that to refine our ability to target energy efficiency projects moving forward. Next slide, please. And so the underlying impetus for this effort is the Department of Energy, we'd observed, had been investing in a number of projects over the last decade to build up resources for standardization of energy data development, standardization of energy data management, and also standardization of simulation. And we want to put those parts together and prove that they could be put together in a useful whole and enable a plan, do, act cycle for our team, where we would iteratively improve our understanding of buildings as we initially starting from public records, but based on our actual direct interaction with those building owners and their occupants. Next slide. And the engine of actually delivering energy efficiency projects in this project is existing ratepayer funded California energy efficiency programs, primarily San Francisco's long-running Energy Watch program focused on small and medium businesses as well as multifamily, but for this project it was just a focus on small and medium commercial, as well as BRICR's nascent BRICR business program, which incorporates and builds on a number of the ideas in the BRICR project and in some ways goes beyond them. Next slide, please. And a quick tour of the technologies that were put together and assembled into a usable whole included Building Sync, so standard for storing data from energy audits in XML format. The Commercial Building Energy Saver, a substantial CEC funded effort led by LBNL to develop a number of ways of simplifying energy modeling and identifying energy efficiency opportunity for buildings in California based on rich data sets that are available in California. OpenStudio, which is a graphic user interface that allows development of otherwise very complex Energy Plus models individually and in bulk. A standard energy efficiency database, a audit template developed by PNNL is our user interface. And then really front and center in energy efficiency policy in California currently is the ecurve, or Open Energy Efficiency Meter, which is a company that develops and delivers calculation of realized energy savings via open and transparent and published methods that are defined by Caltrack 2.0. And so putting all those things together, the main item developed in this project as software is the BRICR gem, which is a open source script that manipulates the information derived from each of these and enables these different tools to work together. Next slide. Just a quick highlight, if you heard some jargon there about realized energy savings, what we're referring to is comparing for projects that receive an energy efficiency upgrade, it's necessary, particularly in California, to have a credible and transparent means of identifying what was the energy savings. And the Open Energy Efficiency Meter is a tool specifically designed to calculate both at individual site and more frequently at scale weather normalized energy savings based on performance before and after the intervention. And this is really a critical component, so we know when we talk about saving energy and when we implement a project, were those savings really realized? And a key reason this is important is increasingly, particularly after AB 802, California is focused on applying energy efficiency incentive resources to projects that can demonstrate actual savings, and the BRICR for Business program specifically is a pay-for-performance program where an ESCO partner helps us in delivering energy efficiency upgrades to small and medium commercial buildings. So not the MUSH market, but small and medium commercial, and their payment is contingent on realized energy savings. Next slide. BRICR currently supports 29, again, very highly readily available on-the-shelf technologies as individual measures and also as packages of those measures through the application of these measures to our simulation database. We identified potential for up to 25% energy savings in buildings in small and medium commercial buildings in San Francisco. And what we're looking for from you is suggestions for and motivation and rationale for why this list should be expanded to include technologies such as those that you've been working on. Next slide.
Okay.
So I'll pass it to you, Doug, and happy to answer questions.
Okay, yeah, and we'll have a question and answer in a second. I guess I wanted to ask you, Barry, a couple of questions before we go to the open call. So, you've been doing this for some time, right? I mean, you've definitely been doing this, for the better part of your career. And you've been, like I said, we all know you in the Bay Area as somebody who's been leading on energy efficiency. Number one, what got you onto small buildings? And number two, what do you think the biggest struggle is for small buildings owners or small building managers to get to an energy efficiency goal that you would normally see in larger buildings?
So the motivation for this and I think related work is that we really want to connect perspectives. As a city, San Francisco has longstanding climate action goals, and those are certainly critically dependent on improving building performance and reducing carbon emission from operation of buildings. Buildings are about 45% of total carbon emissions. And in support of that, San Francisco happens to have been not only benefited from direct delivery of energy efficiency programs by utilities such as PG&E and by others, but actually by city staff through the Department of Environment. We have been the implementer of a series of energy efficiency programs that are generally need to meet the same cost effectiveness criteria as any other, but are also rooted in San Francisco's public policy goals that of supporting small business and multifamily, both economically and in terms of sustainability, really helping those who would otherwise not necessarily have access to these energy efficiency programs. So that really gets to two layers: that we need to understand our built environment in greater detail to meet our climate action goals, and marshaling data is essential to that. And at the same time, we need to deliver offerings that really meet people where they are in terms of the access to resources and the sophistication of the businesses in the buildings, as well as the buildings themselves.
Got it. So, for large buildings, and I guess for an indelicate term, high budget projects, there's really impressive engineering if you go to it. There's obviously some very well-known engineering firms nationally that do this extremely well. That's really out of scale for someone that has a 40,000 square foot building to really get the energy savings, or at least get an ROI on that expense. So if it's not engineers that provide that channel for energy efficiency options, who is it?
Well, I mean, I think we definitely do. We want to be very open. So the reason I'm having a little trouble answering your question is, one answer is we do through via those programs that I mentioned, and that's really to fill a gap. But that is not because we're seeking to compete with anybody, but rather that we need to make sure that those markets are served. And there's been a lot more attention to larger, more complex buildings, because you tend to have a similar number of decision makers per building, and so a bigger building has bigger savings potential, and it's just there's a lot of reasons for that. But we have to address our smaller buildings, or we just don't meet our emissions goals, and we also don't serve our economic development needs.
Got it. Good. Well, I appreciate all of that. Now, and I guess I would just one last kind of question or assumption. Although this particular effort is funded by the U.S. Department of Energy, and there's strict parameters to this as a project. There's no perennial funding to this kind of effort. I guess I'd like to have you share your hopes in terms of where this tool goes, and what you hope to do with the information that comes from this call and from the sessions that we're going to be holding to make our recommendations.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I just want to emphasize that this call is meant to be to use BRICR as a launching point, but it is not necessarily a call for solely what should be added to this particular toolkit that we've developed, but rather what would be useful to serve the small and medium commercial sector, and particularly what may be amenable to bulk simulation for initial targeting, or otherwise innovative program delivery models. So if you have a technology, whether it's physical or controls or something that we didn't even list in the open call, we're really just trying to provide a roadmap and recommendations to particularly Department of Energy, but also others about where there'd be great opportunity from further software development. And so in that context, I'd just like to introduce Tianzhen Hong, who's been our critical partner and thought leader throughout this process. And would you like to introduce yourself, Tianzhen, and talk a little bit about some of your related work, such as City Building Energy Saver, or on future projects?
Yes. Morning, Barry. Morning, Doug. Good morning, everybody. So this is Tianzhen from Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. We've been working, with Barry and Doug and other partners as part of the BRICR project, and of course with our DOE, managers. So as Barry illustrated, I think, there are, a couple dozen technologies, that, show cost effective for small, medium office and retail buildings. But the software tool BRICR is open source, which means that, commercial companies can also build their customized user interface or platform based on that. And at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, we also, have other software tools and definitely leverage what we developed for the BRICR project. I think Barry earlier mentioned it's a commercial building energy saver, more focus on the California building stock and Title 24, current standards. We also have beyond individual building, there's a city BS, which is sort of to look at a retrofit at a district or even, neighborhood scale. So I think there's multiple, opportunities that, I think some of you folks here, if you have technology that shows promising, there's a potential that, those kind of tools can, try to implement and add, to the BRICR, framework.
Great.
And just a key reason we're emphasizing that, Doug, is already, the software developed for BRICR has been incorporated in other. BRICR is a finite project that will come to a conclusion, and we hope to continue to use it in San Francisco. But what's been developed for it has also been incorporated in other DOE funded projects that have longevity and other interests well beyond us. And so this is that's really the spirit of why we're working with you to try to highlight, where this can and should go, because there are people who've been following the project and are interested in taking up those ideas.
Great, and I'm so glad that you both made that point, because the effort which we're going to describe now is in one sense a portion of one project, but it does have its ties to the future, and that's what's really important here. So Barry, Tianzhen, thank you so much for your comments. Let's talk about the call. So the open call is it's going to be a document. It's a request for information style call that invites startups and other technology providers to submit information regarding a set of building technologies, which we'll talk about in a second. A lot of the information that you've heard in this session will also be referred to in this call, and there will be links to a description of the overall BRICR program and a number of other things. This call will be published tomorrow. It will be sent directly to folks that have joined this discussion today and others on our mailing list. It'll come out through a MailChimp platform. It'll also be published through direct mail by our partners. We're working with Joseph Amador of Amador Consulting, who is a product market expert in commercial building tech, who's been a great partner to Prospect Silicon Valley. Joe will also be distributing this. And so there will be a network nationally for folks to receive this call. So we'll be promoting the availability of this through a number of channels. I'm sure that Barry and others will be passing this forward to their networks as well. So we're going to be casting a wide net. Now this document will have a link to a response form. It's meant to help you identify yourself, the technology that you're describing, or the categories that you're responding to. You'll have the opportunity to provide attachments and a number of things. There is a timeline for responses. This is not going to be a perennial call, although we'll always be glad to hear from folks. We will be having follow-up where there are questions or incomplete information, et cetera. So there will be a process. The next step beyond responding is that we are assembling a very qualified panel of expert reviewers. These will be folks from the academic community, the design community, both engineering and architecture, industry experts, whether that's through a large corporate or from other areas such as building developers and owners. So we'll have a diversity of very experienced experts that we'll be working with on two central questions. One, when we think about expanding the kind of measures that Barry described, amongst those that are market available but advanced, what would be recommended in terms of pursuing for smaller buildings, or seem to have potential for smaller buildings. And then number two will be, what's the emerging technology that's still in startup realm that may be very, very early in commercial growth, or maybe even pre-commercial, that we could also review. Those two charrette-like sessions will produce recommendations and special, I'd say, recognition of the ideas that we've heard and that we've received through this process. We'll be providing those recommendations to Barry. We'll also be passing those forward to the program managers at the U.S. Department of Energy. And so, one of the benefits of participating here is that recognition will be there. And, I don't want to say, hey, exposure is the next best thing to money. But in this case, there will be, as you see, there will be a thread to this that moves into other efforts, and we'd like to continue to make these things happen. Number two, for those startups that are specially noted by our expert panel, Prospect Silicon Valley will be profiling you in social media and other promotional efforts moving forward. And everyone that participates in this call and responds will be part of Prospect Silicon Valley's ecosystem, and will continue to communicate with you, and we'll find opportunities to work with you in the future. So we think that this is a very important effort, and we certainly hope you agree that this can be the start to a set of opportunities for everybody who participates and really brings the good information. So here is the very small, easy to read list of technologies that we believe run beyond the current profile of the effort. These are, this is obviously a, quite a bit of options. But when we're thinking about buildings, we're thinking about some of the advanced systems. We're thinking about things that are now connecting with buildings, such as EV chargers and storage, we're also, especially in light of current circumstances with commercial buildings and workplace, we'd like to expand that thought to even space conditioning and indoor air quality and monitoring. This will be in the call. I'm not going to read these off one by one, but you can see that there's quite a bit of opportunity in this response field for folks to get engaged. And we'll be looking forward to hearing from all of you there. A bit about schedule. As I mentioned, the open call will be released tomorrow through the channels we discussed, and we'll continue to make it known that this call is active. We'd like to invite clarifying questions, and we'll make modifications to the call or make other information available in the next 2 weeks. We think that that's fair. We'd like to get all of our responses to this open call by the end of October. So we're giving plenty of time for people to respond and plenty of time for this to reach everyone's eyes. We're recognizing this is national in scope, and it's going to take a little bit for things to bounce around. In the month of November, we will have worked ahead, and we will set up the review charrettes that we discussed. So we'll have 2 charrettes in November on those 2 topics of market available but advanced, and then also the emerging and startup side of the responses. That will happen in November. We'll be making recommendations in December to the BRICR team. We'll also make special recognition of startups that we're seen as especially notable and impactful through the reviews that we do. So you'll see a lot of activity the rest of this year. And as Barry said, we really hope that a lot of this will, begin to make a connection to future efforts. We're now going to open this up, and I'm going to ask Taylor if he could maybe give us maybe a good process here for questions and answers. I assume we can have people raise their hands, or Taylor, what would be the best way to moderate Q&A here?
Yeah, I think first thing first is whenever you have the mic or when you have the floor, be sure to introduce yourself and just and the name of your company or organization that you're with. And then I will follow through and click on raised hands. So just introduce yourself, name, company, and then go ahead and shoot your question. And keep an eye out. I will unmute you, and then you'll have the option to speak.
Oh, I just saw that, but I didn't realize that was my cue. Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for the presentation, exciting program.
Thank you.
My name is Rimis Galbanus. I'm one of the founders of a company called Malka. We're based out of New York, but we work with quite a few entities in California. One question was the reliance on a lot of the open standards that you've referenced, Building Sync, especially. We're working currently on a SBIR grant to enable audit template and Building Sync to be managed at very large scales for large auditing programs. And one of the ideas that we had was the idea of enabling a clearinghouse of Building Sync XML files that can be managed centrally. So the idea is there's an XSD, which is defining the structure of the Building Sync file, and all the list of measures that you're interested in actually managing for your program would fall within that structure. But another entity might want a different set of measures, for instance. but it's still leveraging the same XSD structure of that building sink schema. So I'm wondering, in terms of your plans for generalizability, whatever you guys come up with in terms of the measures that you want to offer and manage, is the idea just to kind of come up with that list and just have it applied to your program? Or is there an opportunity to make this actual argument for a clearinghouse where BRICR might have its list of measures that are building sync compatible, but say AB 802 has its list of measures as that evolves, or some other entities? So that's one question, is how much should we think about generalizability? You guys mentioned this is the first step, but should our response be geared for the first step or something much larger in scale? I'll just leave it there for now. Thanks.
Yeah, one huge question was enough for now. You could certainly follow up with another question, sir. Barry, I kind of feel like this is in your field as far as the kind of the bigger picture. What is the interest of BayREN and DOE with respect to this kind of larger framework?
Well, perhaps oddly, I actually think, Remus, your answer to your question would be something I'd value. I mean, I like that suggestion a lot. I concur that it'd be valuable to have, either a central repository, or at least, seems like a longer question to have to decide whether there's a sort of canonical set of building sinks held by a single entity versus some shared set of maybe more constrained data that would be usable in different formats, or not different formats, but by different parties. And I just want to both let Tianzhen respond, but also acknowledge that I think you'd be a person that I would want to answer that question, given that you are running a private sector initiative that's applying the same technologies in a lot of similar formats, and therefore, you're sorry to run around here, but I just, what your take on that, I think it'd be very valuable. Tianzhen, do you want to?
Well, just the more general, related question, that is, for the RFI, should we focus on kind of the more constrained first step, or should we also make a much larger argument of this is where we can see that first step leading, and this is how we would want to build it? Because it does impact very much what kind of architectural decisions you make early on in the process. So.
Could I maybe offer an idea? Nothing is going to keep you from responding twice. So if you were to provide the more focused response that we can look at in one context, but provide information in a larger context that ought to be considered, we would be happy to hear that.
Okay.
No, yeah, we would be completely open to this, and this is, within reason, a tabula rasa type of approach, so that we can look at what people bring, and we can actually help kind of sort, organize, and make make some educated evaluations of this without overly constraining the responses.
Perfect.
Yeah, Doug, can I make a comment?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it's like opportunities that if you're thinking about, right, storing, managing the building sync files, that's this platform called SEED, Standard Energy Efficiency Data Platform, and it's also open source. I think what Barry mentioned before, like the small, medium-sized commercial buildings in San Francisco, basically those data are stored in the SEED, repository. So you can, either get those data into SEED, or you can build your own platform on top of SEED, to manage whatever data, you talk about. And then for the other majors, there's a potential you can create Open Studio majors and add it to the library. Again, I think you can use Open Studio using a BRICR as it is, but you can also build, your own platform and, product.
Very good.
Which you have, right? It's Malka.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, yeah, my question was more on the schema management of the actual options for programs rather than where to store data itself. So programs can choose to copy one another, modify what list of measures they have to offer, things like that. I mean, just to set like a GitHub repo would be more than sufficient for that. That'd be instantly accessible for anyone, but somebody has to maintain it, right? That's the issue with that. I mean, from our perspective, yeah, we like to integrate with as many open tools and standards as possible. So that's yeah. Thank you.
I think just to keep the conversation flowing, instead of raising hands, just go ahead and unmic yourself and jump into the conversation and do your best to not overspeak over each other.
Other questions?
Hey guys, I have a quick question. It might be slightly off topic. My name is John. I'm from Comfort IQ. Someone had mentioned that there's ESCOs that will actually finance projects for smaller buildings. In my searches, I've never encountered one just because of the complexities of doing small deals like that. Who's an ESCO that does small projects like that?
ESCO might be a simplification for conversation, but they're effectively ESCOs. Joule Energy is an example, Lime Energy. And so currently BRICR for Business is a program that's is up and launched in the Bay Area, and Joule Energy is the party providing that aspect of the service, and they're doing so on a pay-per-performance basis, where they not going into like super deep on the details, but they have a assurance, their own risk management based on knowing that they would get a certain amount of payment based on closing the project and delivering the actual upgrade, and then the remaining payment contingent on the actual realized energy savings. And so it's in that.
I'm sorry.
It's in that kind of AB 802 sphere that we do see growth of those sort of offerings and pay performance offerings.
Quick follow-up question to that. We're very close to commercialization, and we have been trying to work with ESCOs. There are some that will take a little bit of risk on a new technology. Do you know if any of those organizations that you just mentioned would be willing to work with a startup and maybe doing some pilot projects to gauge some of the energy savings and then take it from there?
I don't know that I could speak for them.
Thank you,
John. We'll take special note of that question, and I can assure you it'll be covered in the charrette one way or another. I think it's an important point to how we look at these responses. Is how do we connect it with actual financing and installation.
I've got a question.
Okay.
Mark Berman, Nightbreeze Corporation. We're building sales of a retrofit ventilation cooling system that's easy to retrofit room by room, building by building. If a technology or a product is selected by the group beyond the ESCOs, how might it be introduced to other organizations that would utilize it through their programs or through their business?
Right. So I have a couple of responses to that. One, just fully recognizing kind of the short-term end goal here is to make recommendations of things that are definitely worth tracking and definitely worth considering for future projects or for future inclusion in other programs. And I recognize that doesn't fully respond to your question, but we are going to be keeping track with everyone that responds to this effort as Prospect Silicon Valley. And we believe that, one, that will provide some opportunities for connection with other elements of what we do. And number two, we could be following for additional support or programs that we undertake.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just to underscore that, the software that we talked about that has been the centerpiece of work we've been doing, that's open source. It's not software tied to ESCOs. It's that the way that in San Francisco, there's an application of the in a program delivering energy efficiency upgrades that relates to that software. That's where an ESCO. So this discussion is not dependent on ESCOs. I'm happy to have a discussion of that, but it is more that we have developed software, and the labs have lots of different ongoing projects that develop software that are available for energy, and any energy implementer that either it's either open source or licensable software developed in the public interest. So it's not tied to a delivery model.
Okay, great.
That
Thanks.
help, Mark?
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mark. Okay. Other questions? Okay.
I'll chime in again if everyone's being
sure, absolutely.
So in terms of the data that I pulled up like another image, I guess, on the BRICR stuff online here. And it does seem that building sync is very much the kind of a piece of glue, right, for multiple sources and somehow outputs, which we hadn't really thought about. I'm getting some reverb from someone. But in terms of managing releases, actually, I'm getting, is everyone hearing the feedback, or is it just me? I'm having a difficult talking. Sorry. In terms of managing, so for instance, Building Sync 2.0 came out, basically released in February with a lot of breaking changes from the initial Building Sync update. And they're still in the process of creating beads mappings to more standardize all the field names in Building Sync, which is going to be an ongoing process as well. There's obviously the risk of creating that first step of implementation without understanding the needs for maintaining and updating these things and building in a way to implement additional breaking changes so you're staying current with everything. So I'm wondering what is the program's philosophy and impetus, I guess, for that longer term vision of maintaining these standards and implementations.
That's something I'd love to have a beer and talk with you about. I just say to be very clear, BRICR has the actual BRICR software development process has gone where it's gone. It's proven concept. And we have our own program that is doing some ongoing work and expanding and customer development. But we also have finite resources for maintaining it. And so we do a motivation for identifying Building Sync in the first place is that that's a project really managed by the labs. And so to answer that question fully, I'd want to have that conversation with the labs. And that is a versioning challenge that we have. But just to be clearer, we're expecting more of a response to this call to focus on the technologies to be applied to the buildings. And I would be happy to talk with you and learn from you about the targeting technologies and measurement and verification. And I have just, sorry to overemphasize this, I have a lot of respect for the work that Malk has been doing on this front. But this call is more for what should be included in either future or derivative works rather than how should our software be maintained.
Got it. Sorry for responding the issue then, but thank you very much.
You might be muted, Doug.
Taylor, I think we're ready to wrap up.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think we're just about at time. So thank you, Doug. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Tianxian. This was, I think, a pretty informative conversation we had. Any final questions now, or you can message us later on. The document will contain an email for you. If there's any questions that you have that are not answered in the document, you can always reach out to us there.
And for those of you who are assisting us as network partners, well, we will provide links to the call that you can share through social media and others if you so choose, and we would appreciate that. And again, our gratitude for your time today, and we're looking forward to the process moving here in the coming weeks. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Excellent. Have a great day wherever you are. Bye.
Bye.